Week 6 of the NFL season officially in the books. The Cowboys beat the Chargers on Monday Night Football. Our immediate takeaways from that one, trying to power rank now after 6 weeks what this league looks like, who our favorite teams are, how good are the Lions, how good are the Cowboys and Chargers now after that loss, as stacked in with the rest of the league, and how about all those Week 6 injuries. All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to the everydayers. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. 20-17, the final. Justin Herbert interception sealed it as the Dallas Cowboys beat the Los Angeles Chargers on Monday Night Football 2017. Matt, there's a lot of folks that are asking us a lot of questions about Justin Herbert. Do you want to start with the Cowboys side of things or the Chargers side of things?
Let's do a quick overview of the game, and then I want to do that for sure, because the Chargers sitting at 2-3 right now is a little concerning, to say the least. Big picture. So I thought both quarterbacks played well, but not great, and left some plays on the field. Herbert missed some throws, and Dak was hit or miss. I thought both running games were subpar. I thought Keenan Allen and CeeDee Lamb kind of canceled each other out as true number one difference maker receivers. I thought the Chargers pass rush was superior to the Cowboys, but the Cowboys was more crucial. The Parsons sack at the end and a couple tackles for loss and things of that nature. And in the end, it was a very even, lower scoring game than a lot of us thought.
I think the Cowboys defense had a nice bounce back. After that week, giving up 42 points, which was their entire season total up to that point last week against the Niners. And to come back in this game, not allow the Chargers to get anything going on the ground, making them a little bit one-dimensional. And, Keenan Allen got open multiple times, had the touchdown catch, but it really felt like the Cowboys had an easier time just getting what they wanted to do rolling, even though their output didn't look amazing. It was a very similar idea of like, okay, here's our guy that we like to move around in the slot, who's good at getting open. We got CeeDee Lamb and Keenan Allen. They're going to make some plays. Everybody else is going to make a couple plays here and there. And in the end, it was the Cowboys that just were able to make a couple more plays than the Los Angeles Chargers were. But overall, I came out of this game thinking, okay, it's sort of like a Los Angeles Chargers hero ball offense where if Justin Herbert has a great game, they're going to win. If Justin Herbert makes some mistakes, they're going to lose. And so what that does is just heightens the awareness of Justin Herbert. And so you put all the blame and all of the glory on Justin Herbert, where there's a lot else going on with the team. And it just doesn't feel like the Chargers are ever going to get out of that mode that they've been in for like 3 years now.
Yeah, and maybe even 3 decades. Like going back to Rivers and Fowl. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say they're cursed, but boy, they seem to have star quarterbacks and tease you a lot since I was 6 years old. And I hope Herbert's different than that in terms of winning. But I know that we're going to get questions about, is this guy a choker? Is he a winner? All these things. I don't know. We can discuss that down the line.
We've already got those saved for our mailbag.
Tomorrow, that could be tomorrow.
So, you don't have to ask us if he's a choker. We've already got that in there. At BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL, or in the YouTube comments, by the way, for Wednesday's mailbag episode.
And I think Staley deserves some heat as well. And I thought Eckler would, help boost the running game a little bit. But to your point, Dallas's run defense was pretty impressive. And Eckler and Pollard kind of canceled each other out. They both had a lot of touches, but didn't do a lot with it or really didn't influence the game all that much. I thought this was a very equal game that maybe would give you 5-5 if they played it 10 times.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I think they're the same caliber, the same tier of NFL football team. The Dallas Cowboys were able to make a couple more plays than the Los Angeles Chargers were on this one. Both sides of the ball. Brandon Cooks making a really nice catch there and kind of starting to make his presence felt a little bit in the Dallas Cowboys offense. Even though you look at the box score, 4 for 38. Wasn't he had the one rushing attempt as well, so 14 more yards on his totals. But the touchdown catch was nice, and they really need that extra piece beyond CeeDee Lamb. And again, the kind of mirror images of these teams, you look at the other side, they could use Cooks. The Chargers could, because it's Keenan Allen. Like, okay, Palmer making a couple plays. The rookie Quinton Johnson, by the way, 2 targets, 0 catches. He's doing absolutely nothing for that team in his rookie year. And everyone was rushing to the waiver wire after Mike Williams went down, and Quinton Johnson doesn't look like the guy for them, at least this year, or at least right now in his rookie season.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you brought up both those names, because I know Cooks didn't light it up for your fantasy team, but I did think he influenced the game quite a bit, played with some swagger, some aggression. They always talk about, or the announcers talk about, and they talk about this at every stop with him, that he's a leader in that wide receiver room, and I think there's some value to that. Gallup isn't quite back to where he was. Who knows if he will be? The tight ends are just okay. And Johnston, there was a play that he was pretty open deep where Herbert missed him, but I think he's for next year. We talk about this a lot on Locked On Dynasty, that Palmer's well ahead of him, and that was obvious from the start of the season. And you definitely would want more from him, with his size, speed, after catch ability, this stage of his career. But I really think he was drafted because Allen and Williams are both monster cap hits next year, and they have a lot of salary cap issues. It's why J.C. Jackson's in New England, that he's going to be a starter next year. I think that's why he was drafted, but it'd sure be nice to get something out of him now.
No doubt. Okay, we got to move on to the rest of the league.
Oh, real quick, 20 penalties in this one too. Your Browns-Niners game. Like, can we just let him play a little bit more, guys?
Yeah, that's been a big topic of.
Yeah.
There was the Bills game where Josh Allen just had a normal ass play for a quarterback to be hit, and they're getting I think the league really needs to start utilizing the fine mechanism more than over officiating the actual games, because things are happening too fast, and unless it is so obvious that you can't unsee it, that you clearly saw the exact helmet to helmet, 100% for sure it happened, you throw the flag. If you're not sure, you can't throw that flag. I feel like they're anticipating some of these penalties out there, and they've already called certain things less than they used to, because you could call a hold on every play, as I always say. But at some point you got to let them play. It ruins the viewership of the game, because there's these stops and starts, and then a big play gets taken away, and sometimes it shouldn't have been taken away, or a big play is given when it shouldn't have been there, and the coverage was great. And there was kind of a phantom, the Chiefs game. People think that going back all the way to Thursday, got a lot of those. It's like, oh, the league is trying to help the Chiefs win games, and they're throwing flags on plays that there shouldn't be flags thrown on. And the whole thing is scripted. There's too many penalties, and it's so hard to officiate. I don't know what the fix is, except for you can't guess. You got it. It's got to be so obvious, 100% a penalty before you throw that flag, because there's too many bad calls, and there's too many calls, period.
And I know some people really study it, and it's a betting thing, and you can find all the information out there. But if you break down every crew, the officiating crew, there's massive tendencies. There's 1 or 2 that barely call holds. There's 1 or 2 that throw flags left and right.
That seems insane, right?
Yeah, I know. Right. Can't there be a little more consistency here? Or if your crew is throwing 20% more flags than the second most, maybe you need to be reexamined,
That might be a question for the old mailbag as well. And I'm sure it's bouncing around a lot of people's heads. Maybe we can get together and figure some things out there. I feel like we've talked about this for years too on the podcast. Every so often during the season, it comes up. How do we fix officiating? Should this be reviewable? Should this not? How do you call this? How do you call that? But I do
think they get more right than ever, though. in terms of did he get the first down? Is his knee down? Is it a catch?
Their batting average is insane, and seeing how fast it goes, that's the biggest problem I have with it, is that they're asked to do the impossible. Mm-hmm. So how do we stop asking them to do that? That's what that's where I'm at with it mostly, and it hurts the product. I remember back when who was it? I don't know. It was a player coming over from like Aussie Rules football, rugby, and so there was a whole bunch of eyeballs on the NFL for a few weeks, right? It's the start of the season. There was people who didn't watch football that were tuning in, and it was like there was this one journalist that was like, okay, I'm going to live tweet the game. I'm going to live blog the game. And he's like, okay, what do we got going on here? Okay, they stopped again. Okay, they're stopping again. Okay, they're stopping again. He's like, how could you watch this? There's no action. Nothing ever happens. They just stop constantly. Even when something good happens, it stops and get undone. And I was like, yeah, I'm with you, man. We got to have less of that in the NFL.
100%. And I watch very little baseball. The Pirates are dead to me. I mean, but I've heard that this pitch clock thing was a success. You know, like people want to see things quick, especially the younger generations. I mean, you know this with your young son. They have a hard time sitting there watching play after play. I mean, they're used to now, you know?
The pitch clock has been great. There's been some awkward moments too that they could clean up. But overall, it's like, man, a game that starts at 7 p.m. over here on the West Coast goes till, 1 a.m. for you on the East Coast. And there's games where I'm like, oh, I'm going to tune in, catch the end of the game. It's like, oh, shoot, they got it over in 2.5 hours. That used to never happen. Wow. So it's helpful. And I think it would help this product as well. Yeah, all right. Next, let's talk about the injuries. So we're basically going to go power ranking injuries and then talk about how things changed in maybe the NFL's power rankings as well after 6 weeks of the NFL season. Next. Today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Do you ever feel like your brain is sort of getting in its own way? Can't fall asleep at night, racing thoughts all the way through your mind, and you can never settle down. And that never settling of the mind makes it difficult for you to complete your day-to-day tasks, or maybe one big task that you're trying to do, or trying to get, day to week to month and finish a project. But you just can't shut that brain down, right? Well, therapy helps you figure out what's holding you back so you can work for yourself instead of working against yourself. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. And all you do is you fill out a brief questionnaire at betterhelp.com/lockedon, and you'll get matched with a licensed therapist. And if you don't jive with that therapist, you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge, and really make your brain your friend again with BetterHelp, and make your brain, make yourself work for you instead of against you. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Today's episode is also brought to you by DoorDash. Come on, you don't want to root for your team on an empty stomach, right? Whenever I think of, okay, it's a primetime game, my mind goes to it. I'm sure it's the same for all the listeners out there. Matt, I'm sure it's the same for you. Game's about to be on. Big game, Monday nighter, whatever it is, you're like, okay, what's the spread going to be for this game for me? And Matt, and I know you and I have talked a lot about when we're eating, and DoorDash is the way to go for me to go get that food to you. And we don't like to have wings because we got to work, we got to type, we got to write, we got to take notes sometimes when we're watching football. So it might be a little bit different for us. So I like to go to things that I need a fork and knife to eat, because my hands are clean to put down the fork, type a little bit, write some notes, come back to the food, right? But for you, if you're not working, quote unquote working, I say, during the game, you might want to go straight to the finger food. So whatever it is, time to pull out your Lucky Charm jersey, order your favorite apps, snacks on DoorDash, because football season is here, and there's nothing I equate more than watching a football game, especially a primetime football game, than food. And you can find anything you need, all of your party favorites at DoorDash. And our listeners get 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order at DoorDash when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply. Again, that's LOCKED23. Don't forget to use code LOCKED23 for 50% off up to $10 value on your first order when you download the DoorDash app. Spend $15 or more. Subject to change, terms apply. Injuries. Let's go there. It's bad news for a lot of teams, and there's a lot of big name players out there on the injured list right now. And so we're learning more about MRIs and things as the week goes along. And Matt, you and I had the idea of power ranking the injuries. What were the most impactful injuries that might have the biggest bearing on the NFL season? And it turns out ESPN's Bill Barnwell kind of did the same thing. So
they sort of beat us to us. Yeah.
Yeah. Hat tip to Bill. He got it out quick. And so we're going to take a look at his list and talk about it a little bit. These week 6 injuries, they were no joke. And it starts with Lane Johnson. The way he ranked them, by the way, is he ranked them by how hard it is to replace that player for that team. And I think the way I want to look at it a little bit more is which one's more impactful for the NFL season as a whole. Lane Johnson, number 1 on his list. And that is pretty important when you got a team that might be number 1 in the power rankings right now. Even though they lost to the Jets this week, the Philadelphia Eagles, I mean, that's a stalwart offensive line, a big part of what they do up front. Or as
without question. Yeah, without question. And it's an ankle for him. And Johnson is an elite movement player. Like, go back and look at his combine. I mean, he would lit it up before offensive linemen ever did that. And he plays that way. And he's really, to me, the best right tackle of this generation and should be a Hall of Famer. And you wouldn't think, a tackle is the most impactful. But Bill mentions it here in his article that since Johnson entered the league in 2013, it's a long time, Philadelphia's quarterbacks have posted a 63.0 QBR with him on the field, which is the 4th best mark in football. And they weren't all great quarterbacks. Without Johnson, they drop all the way to 45.5, which is 31st over the same time frame. I mean, that's 4th best versus 31st best with one guy off the field, a tackle. And I don't have this number, and Bill didn't cite it, but I heard it on a podcast yesterday that they win in the high 70% of their games when Johnson starts and finishes a game, where they're at like 30% when he doesn't. I mean, he's that important, and there's a big enough body of work to believe it.
So not making Bill Barnwell's list is another offensive tackle. Trent Williams got hurt for the 49ers. Also an ankle injury. Trent Williams battled through it, came back in the game, which makes you think it's maybe not as severe an injury, which is probably why he doesn't make the list, but he's right there with Lane Johnson. That's the best left tackle, the best right tackle in the NFL. Those are guys you don't necessarily replace because it's like a shutdown corner. It's like they can do so much by themselves. You can run behind them. You don't have to worry about them getting beat one-on-one, even against some of the best pass rushers in the league. So that's huge. And there was fear that for Trent Williams, it was going to be a high ankle sprain. He's day-to-day right now. He wasn't an air cast. He actually said he said he didn't want to let his backup go in there against Myles Garrett. That's why he came back in the game, or else he might not have come back in the game against the Browns. So, a team player, a gamer there. Those are guys you just don't replace. It's a team effort.
I want to take a second to talk about one thing, because we know Miami has kind of become San Francisco of the East, and they obviously that they structure things offensively very similarly, of course. And I think they do the same thing with their offensive line. Like, Armstead isn't Trent Williams. Nobody is, but they're paying him a ton of money. And when healthy, Armstead's a top 3-4 left tackle. And why I bring that up is really the other 4 on both those lines are kind of the pips. They're not spending a ton of money on them. They have one stud, and then they help the rest. And they know the scheme can, help out linemen more than most schemes. And so it's really important for the Niners, to me, and Miami, you haven't paid for it yet, to have one star and then the other 4.
And it's really not surprising when you think about all the big Christian McCaffrey runs recently. And Christian McCaffrey, by the way, number 2 on Bill Barnwell's list of power ranking the injuries from week 6. You all of a sudden, you motion over George Kittle, and then you got Kyle Juszczyk in the backfield. You're running left off the hip of Trent Williams. That's where a lot of those big Christian McCaffrey runs. Think back to all the McCaffrey 49ers runs. A lot of them he's running on the left side of the field, right? It's really powerful to know you can get some space on that side when you need to, and then you're protected in the pass protection when you need that as well.
No question.
Christian McCaffrey, he's got an injured oblique and rib. So still awaiting MRI as we sit here on Tuesday morning, and it should come later today. So we don't know the specifics here. I have to imagine it's going to keep him out for a little while. He tried to get back in the game. He had one play. They pulled him back out on Sunday. McCaffrey's just the type of guy. they were talking earlier on in the week when Kyle Shanahan and offensive line coach Chris Foerster were asked about, okay, how do you limit his touches? Because he's you got to keep him healthy in January. And they're like, he always wants to go back in the game. It's hard to take him out. It's like, oh, well, you're the coach. Take him out of the game. Snap from himself at some point. That might be what this is. Kyle said he hopes it's one injury and not two, because it might be an oblique and a rib, which makes me believe the MRI is on the oblique, and they already did an X-ray, which is instant, and you get those results right away. They might already know it's a broken rib. So that's what I think if you're just kind of reading the tea leaves on McCaffrey. So this might be actually pretty extensive and keep him out for a couple of weeks. And if it's just oblique, maybe he'll be able to play. If there's a broken rib and an oblique, it might be a little while.
Do you agree that you side on the side of caution?
Oh, yes. But I've been preaching since week 2. I'm like, you can't give him 400 touches in 18 weeks and think he's going to be healthy through January. That's what you need.
No doubt. Right.
So, and look, Kyle Shanahan, like, I actually don't think Christian McCaffrey should be number 2 on this list. If you're just who's the most talented guy, yeah. Kyle Shanahan offense is before McCaffrey, and when McCaffrey's gone, after McCaffrey, Kyle Shanahan offense is going to be able to run the ball. Like, he does a lot extra. Right. You can't, again, sort of like the offensive tackles we talked about, can't really replace him 1-for-1 because he's such a unique player and he's talented, and you're obviously more dynamic with Christian McCaffrey in there. But are we going to pretend that a Kyle Shanahan offense is not going to be able to run the ball suddenly? When they,
I'm sure Mitchell or whoever.
Bad?
Right. They'll just be more traditional. The running backs will run the ball and the pass catchers will catch the ball.
A little more wide back, Deebo in the backfield. But the Deebo, who's going to show up a little bit later on this list because he was also banged up against the Cleveland Browns. Their 3 best offensive players hurt in that game. Ryan Tannehill comes in at number 3 with his injured right ankle.
Interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, their season is spiraling, but there are some franchises, I mean, the Steelers are this way, that probably would never, quote, tank. And I think Vrabel's in that mode, especially in the middle of October. And I don't know that Tannehill out there makes you a contender anyways. I mean, what are you really losing here? It'd be sure nice to learn about Willis and or Levis. And if it is an extended stretch, who do you pick? I mean, I know Willis is ahead of him on the depth chart now, but that doesn't mean that if it's a whole month or 6 weeks, you wouldn't rather see Levis. I'm tending to think that it's getting to that point with the Titans, and it seems early, but I could probably list 6 to 8 teams that should strongly consider tanking already. Giants, Broncos, Patriots, etc.
No doubt. It's hard. I think it's harder. It's hard to tank in the NFL versus some other sports. I think the Broncos are already doing it. I think there's some competitive guys, some competitive coaches. They just, they're just not going to be wired that way. It has to be a management owner GM on down for a tank to kind of really take shape.
And no one's saying don't try hard, guys. I'm just saying we're going to
play Malik Willis and know that we're going to probably lose some games.
Yeah, right. And if
we're trying to get better, we're not trying to win now necessarily. Let's develop. Let's get in. And the question for the Titans is, and I think, clearly they should go into this mode, and however long it can be. By the way, Ryan Tannehill, it was the same ankle last year that ended his season. Like this might be a bad situation for him in his career because he's not really been able to stay healthy for a while now.
I mean, could you get a pick from Tannehill to Atlanta or the Jets, and when he's healthy, and send Derrick Henry to the Chiefs or Ravens and go young?
Right. Yeah, that's full rebuild, and I think it's the smart way to go because especially with Tannehill and Henry, like you can't close your eyes and be like, oh, they're going to be running our team in 5 years, right? No. So
maybe even Hopkins. I mean, I know,
right.
Yeah.
So I think that what'll happen with the Titans is Malik Willis. He's kind of he started ahead on the depth chart. He's been there. You kind of let him play until he plays his way out, and then you let Levis take it the rest of the way.
Yeah, I think that's smart, and it's about that time.
Justin Fields injured his right thumb in a 19-13 loss to the Vikings, and Justin Fields has had his own injury problems, and that's what I mean, you get hit, you get hurt. That's what happens a lot in the NFL, and he does take a beating because of how much he runs the ball. I don't think he's finished. He's been hurt in all 3 of his NFL seasons now, Matt, and another team that has to make some long-term decisions, but clearly, not great for the Bears and Justin Fields and Tyson Bagent. Bagent, I believe is how you pronounce it. He's obviously not a big part of. He's maybe a long-term backup you're hoping to find.
I can't imagine them winning hardly any games with Bagent in there. And to be honest, it's a little bit of Monday morning quarterbacking, but I mean, Fields isn't exactly Aaron Rodgers or Pat Mahomes. I mean, it shocks me that the best they could do for a backup quarterback with all their cap space was Tyson Bagent.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. You would think it would be a good place for a quarterback to go, knowing that Justin Fields is the type of guy who could get hurt or just play his way out of a job.
Mm-hmm.
So and maybe they'll be looking for a quarterback but the thumb, it's hard to throw if you got a broken thumb, right? I don't know how long it's going to last for Justin Fields, but you don't replace him, they're going to lose a lot of games either way. So
hopefully, and it doesn't sound like it's this way, that it's not a season ender or a 2-month deal, because I think you at least need the key here to me is getting Fields on the field to either showcase him for the next team or to say, he showed me enough that I'm going to draft a wide receiver and an offensive tackle early instead of a quarterback. But I can hardly even imagine that right now, especially because right now the Bears have the first 2 picks in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, if Fields doesn't play the rest of the year, there's a new quarterback next year, period. So
I mean, there probably is no matter what.
Yeah, might
like
yeah. All right, next, a few more injuries, and then try to figure out where we fit a few teams in the power rankings at the top of the NFL next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app and find killer deals on last-minute seats. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets for your favorite event, right? Your next big event, you should be excited about it. It shouldn't be a hassle to buy tickets. So with those killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat before you buy, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, theater events, football games near you. I love that you can see the view of your seat before you buy. You know exactly what you're getting when you arrive. There's all-in prices, so you don't get hit with that hidden fee at the end when you're about to check out, which is the most frustrating thing ever. I'm sure everyone listening has gone through that, and it's so frustrating to see all those extra fees at the very end. All-in prices, you know up front what it's going to cost. You buy those tickets in seconds. They're in the app. You don't have to filter through your email to find those tickets once you're at the venue. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Going down the list of the biggest injuries from week 6 is Trevor Lawrence. I don't know what the update is yet on Trevor Lawrence, but it didn't look good the way he went down with his knee injury. And you go from Trevor Lawrence to CJ Beathard. That's it.
They play Thursday night.
Yeah, you're done if you're the Jaguars. And you can't afford to go lose a whole bunch of extra games like this Thursday nighter coming up.
Yeah, but if you sit them, that's a nice 2-week stretch, and then you say, okay, we punt away the Thursday nighter and go from there. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure we'll get news of this in the next 24 hours. I mean, did he practice or not? It's a monster one, but again, the backup situation is so bad. And I hate to say this, and I was on a lot of shows yesterday, so I forget if you and I talked about this, but last year we had 69 quarterbacks start, and it's quickly getting to that level again. I mean, some of the Browns are on their 3rd guy already. I mean, a lot of teams are now dipping into number 2. I mean, are we going to get to 50, 60, 70 starting quarterbacks over the next 3 months?
I will say for quarterbacks and someone like Trevor Lawrence, I don't know how different the game plan is going to be this week against the Saints on Thursday night, but you can, it's not a long way to travel from Jacksonville to New Orleans. You don't practice much in the week anyway, kind of walk through speed. Right. So, if he can play by Thursday, I think he'll play. And it's different than other positions. You can put a knee brace on him, let him go to work. So, but that's going to be interesting to find out. So I don't know how you can be 100% already back in a week, back in 4 days.
No, 100%. That sounds worrisome.
Jimmy G got hurt. I'm going to list off a few names here to end this. Jimmy Garoppolo hurt his back. It seems like he is just constantly hurt everywhere he goes in his career. David Montgomery injured ribs in week number 6, and Deebo Samuel has an injured right shoulder that took him out early for the 49ers against the Cleveland Browns. James Hurst, offensive tackle for the Saints, talking about another Thursday nighter, has an injured left ankle there.
Yeah, the Saints O-line's been problematic. You know, I mean, Penning hasn't played great, and you wouldn't think James Hurst is worth making this list, and clearly he's last, but their line hasn't done them any favors of late. Deebo's kind of, I think they can survive without him. Jimmy's always hurt.
I will say for the 49ers, it starts to stack up if, let's say, you're without Trent and Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, no one overcomes that easily. Yeah.
Any one of them you can get through. If they're all together, I have a feeling the day-to-day nature means that Deebo and Trent are going to be able to play. Christian McCaffrey is the one we're still waiting on here. And, you know, Deebo's injuries is starting to mount as well, and he plays a physical brand of wide receiver. So it's important to have Deebo. Yeah. Christian McCaffrey doesn't play because they kind of operate in a similar area of the field in the passing game.
Yeah, yeah. So we're going to wrap up with some power rank stuff, right? And I know we're up against it. I wanted to kind of hijack this and see if you agree with how I throw out some power rank stuff here. So that's a different way of wording it. Do we all agree Miami's the best offense in the league?
We're going to talk tomorrow more about how offenses are down, and the Dolphins are putting up 40 or 70 points a week still. So their offense is flying on a different plane than everybody else right now.
Yes. I think the Browns defense, as you witnessed, is clearly number one as well, that they're flying on a different plane as well.
I don't know if they're that far ahead, but I think they're in the top tier of defense.
Okay.
It kind of depends on matchups, depends on the week.
I think these four teams led by your Niners are the best combination of both. And I'd probably rank them Niners, Bills, Lions, Chiefs.
So you got Lions over
Chiefs.
Eagles and Lions over Cowboys.
Right this second, yes.
Okay.
I mean, I think they're playing better than those teams.
That's fair.
And, okay.
I think the way you laid it out is accurate, looking at defenses right now, looking at offenses right now as they're playing. And the best combination, offense, defense, 49ers. And we're talking, full health here. With these teams.
Yep. And on the flip side, I think the Patriots, believe it or not, are the worst offense in the league.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
I would say a Tyson Bagent Bears offense is probably pretty close.
Yeah. And I'm going to say Denver, although it's gotten a little better, but they could, ship some pieces out, is the worst defense in the league.
Yes.
And then I would
say the worst defense in the league. It's insane.
Yeah.
And then you combine number 1 and number 32 with best offense, worst defense, you get 70 points.
Exactly. And then I would say the Giants, Bears, which are trending in the wrong way once again, and Panthers are the worst combination of both.
Yep. I'll buy that.
And Cardinals might be trending that way too, unfortunately. Their little time in the sun might be over.
Do you want to save a little more Chargers conversation too tomorrow? Because I want to ask
Yeah. Let's do that.
The Cowboys too, because where do you stack those teams up against Lions, Eagles?
Okay.
They're playoff caliber, but where in the mix do you stack them with power?
We could play the Matthew Berry, fantasy name game, Chargers or Lions.
Right.
Okay.
I like it. Yeah.
All right.
Let's do that. That tomorrow, plus your questions at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL on Twitter, or drop a question in the YouTube comments. Make sure you subscribed everywhere you find your podcast. Matt and I back tomorrow. Peacock and Williamson.